I've been active in the scene for probably about 5, 6 years now. During my vanilla job, I'm a physical therapist with a focus on geriatrics and rehabilitation. So I'm also disabled and enjoy helping disabled people live their best lives.
Kitten?
I'm Kitten. I'm a Philadelphia-based sex educator. I work at Passional Boutique and Sexploratorium, so I'll be showing some of the products and toys that we have during this panel, and also in the next section when we'll be talking more specifically about toys. I use she, her pronouns, and yeah, that's me.
Great. Thanks very much, everybody. We appreciate you being here today. That goes out to both the panelists and to the attendees. And so we're talking about kink today, and I think there are a lot of thoughts and misconceptions about what kink is. I was just wondering if our panelists can speak to what kink means to them.
So kink is really, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, so for me, kink has been really an opportunity to explore and to explore in a way that is not limited by my own chronic pain and health issues. They're definitely something that play into how I play and what I do in play, but it definitely has opened up a lot of different horizons and also changed how I approach my physical being. And that's what's been so fun about it. It's been a great journey that is actually accessible to more people who realize it with the right help and guidance.
Great, thanks. Does anybody else want to talk about what kink is or what kink means to them?
Yeah, similarly, kink to me is really just thinking outside the box, thinking alternatively about our pleasure, and thinking beyond like mainstream societal norms about our pleasure. So it could be thinking about pain as pleasure. It could be different fetishes or dressing up in latex, or it could be about, it could be something as simple as spanking. It could be about relationships and power exchange relationships.
Mordana, do you have anything that you'd like to add to this?
Kink to me is such a complicated, it's a simple thing to ask. It's a simple thing for me to express, but it's a very hard thing to put into words because there's so many unique dynamics, not just to myself, but to other people out there. And it's just things that are just kind of come out of the ordinary, but come as very expressive towards our sexuality and the people that we are inside. And Aisha, you're throwing me. I wasn't expecting to speak too much tonight.
I
was
really
not prepared.
I'm topping you today.
Yeah. So, one thing I did want to tell all the attendees, because I am dungeon moderating tonight. If there's any problems, if anyone gets any type of harassment or any type of bullying or anything like that, please feel free to message me privately if you have anything, even any questions. Just I'm here to make sure that this virtual space stays as a safe space for all of us here, and just so we can just all learn and not worry about anything else.
Thanks.
Yep.
Just to chime in on this topic, the dictionary definition of kink actually is as simple as something that's curvy or curly. And so when I'm talking about, personally, when I'm talking about kink, what I'm talking about is sexuality that, or not even necessarily sexuality, adult behavior that bends a little bit away from the norm. And so to me, what that means is it doesn't matter if you're using, whips or floggers or fire or electricity, whatever it is, it's something that people just don't automatically associate with adult behavior. And it can be really fun. And I really agree with what Mordana said there. It's a means of self-expression. So that's great. And Angela, I heard you talk a little bit about different types of kink play, which means things that you can do with kink. Would you mind talking a little bit more about that?
Sure. So some of the types of play that I enjoy personally are things like flogging or fire play. And so, you know, I've also taken classes, even though I am submissive and I'm the bottom in these scenes. So I'm the one receiving the fire play or the flogging. I still take classes to learn about it because I want to know when I play with a top, when I choose someone that I want to play with, I want to be able to observe them and make sure that they're playing safely. I want to still know what I should be looking for. So that's why it's important to take classes and learn. And also I'm in a, what do I call a total power exchange dynamic. So that's basically taking the play, you know, taking it out of the bedroom, and it's more of a way of life for me. And for my partner, I call him my sir. And so it's sort of like, you know, when you think of play, it's that's in the bedroom, that's submitting my body, and being in a relationship is submitting more of myself to him.
There's a question that I just saw in chat about what fire play is. I know that's something that a few of us here have experienced. Does anybody want to talk about what fire play is and why they enjoy it?
So fire play encompasses a lot of a lot of different techniques, including cupping, percussion play with fire. I believe it really kind of falls underneath a sensation play. It is something that I bottom for very frequently, and it definitely is a specific skill set because of the inherent risk of being burnt, because it's still fire. It can be, and just like a lot of the different plays that are available, it's something that can be very calming and soothing and therapeutic. It can also be very sexual. It can tease into sensual as well as painful, depending on the goals of the people that are involved with the play. It's definitely something that is very important to vet someone and watch them play to make sure that they are safe, and overlaps very nicely with some of the, I often see it overlapping with some of the flow arts as well.
Antoinette, you did say something about sensual or painful. Does kink have to hurt?
Oh, absolutely not. I am actually a rope is my number one, and that's actually something that a lot of people seek me out for play with in rope, is because I pretty much don't want it to hurt. I want you to enjoy yourself and enjoy the sensation of bondage, but it doesn't have to be a painful thing for it to be kink and for it to be enjoyable. Everyone has different goals for what they're looking for in their play, and pain does not inherently have to be a part of that. The other piece of it is that pain is such a subjective thing. So something that might seem painful to one person might be the height of ecstasy for someone else. And so kink really leaves room for that exploration of, is this pain, is this pleasure, is it a little bit of both? And allows you to really skirt and explore the different variations in sensation.
Mm-hmm. I would love to know a little bit more about rope and the variations of rope, what kinds you use, the difference between just tying and suspending, knowing that a lot of people here don't know very much about kink. And I don't know, Kitten, if you have any rope that you could display for us, but that would be lovely too, as Antoinette speaks.
So, oh boy, that's a big topic we're going to hit on. So personally, I currently use synthetic rope. And so your options are really natural fibers, which would include hemp, jute, cotton, silk. And then you have your synthetics, most notably nylon, which is the one with all the really fancy, pretty colors that people enjoy. I use, there's also Hempex and Posh, and Posh is really where my my fancy lies. And in general, you've got your ground rope, which is rope that is just us still on Mother Earth. We're not going up in the air at all. And then suspension work or rigging, which is when we start taking people off of the ground and having their full body weight suspended by the ropes. So go ahead.
I was just going to ask what you enjoy about rope and what the people who are seeking you out for rope play enjoy.
So I'm a switch. So I bottom and I top for rope because we can have all of the fun. I also self-suspend. So as a bottom, the piece that I enjoy the most about rope is this feeling of flying when I'm in the air, having my body just to be able to relax and do something that I normally could not do on my own. Because of my various medical issues, you know, there's no point where I'm going to be doing pull-ups and flips and things like that give you all of those wonderful aerial sensations. But suspension with rope allows me to experience that. The feedback that you get from being bound is also something that I personally find very calming, very centering, and does not have to be a painful situation. As a top, what I really enjoy is allowing people to have that freedom to explore, to try something absolutely different, to be in a situation where they can be in a shape, in a space, in a position that they may not ever be able to achieve of their own volition, and to do it and experience that and just have a lot of fun. So I really enjoy working with people who are different sizes and shapes and who maybe from mainstream rope don't see themselves represented in mainstream rope. You often see very small, petite little Asian ladies from the shibari tradition. And I'm like, all of us can be in rope. We can all go and fly as long as we're doing it safe, and we have to make some modifications depending on what's going on, but we can all be in rope and enjoy that sensation of bondage. So I really push to try to do a sustainable situation so that someone can really settle in and enjoy. I've had people akin my suspension to like staying in a hammock and just feeling like they're cradled and safe and comfortable. That's my personal style of rope. There are people who prefer to do a lot more strenuous things, a lot more potentially painful things. There's always time to do some sexy things while you're in the rope, which is the other reason why I like Posh, because it can be washed. And so it gives you a lot of versatility, and it all starts with a hank of rope, and you can go so far with it, you know.
And I would like to get to some of our other panelists, but you did say something about shibari. What does shibari mean?
It's the word that's used to traditionally talk about Japanese rope bondage, which comes from a tradition of actually being used by the police state to torture and restrain people, and then kind of took this cultural shift that then got picked up and Americanized, and we kind of ran and did our own thing with it as well. So
great. And as we're talking about things that you know, kink means to different people, Angela, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about why you enjoy your own brand of kink, whatever that brand might happen to be.
So for me, as far as BDSM play, I think I compare it to my love of tattoos, because there's a lot of people that'll say, oh, I never get a tattoo because I don't like needles. For me, when I think about tattoos and I think about the pain that I get in kink, it's a pain that I can control. With my disability, I have spina bifida, and I've spent so much of my life in hospitals getting poked and prodded and, you know, in for this test and for that test, that, you know, getting that needle for a tattoo is different, and getting spanked or getting flogged is a different sort of pain. And it helps deal with some of that pain, and it helps, it's something that I can feel proud of and something that I can enjoy.
Can you explain where that sense of pride comes from?
I think it's something that I have control over. Yes, I'm the bottom, but I also say, you know, as the bottom, I have limits, and this is how far I want things to go.
I think that's great. I think that's great. We have another question in the chat. Is pain anchoring? This looks like it was written by Rachel. Rachel, can you explain a little bit more what you mean by that?
Hi, yes. So Angela, when you're talking about tattoos and that kind of like controllable, contained pain that you're in charge of, when it comes, and I have like over 50 tattoos. They're little guys, but I love that kind of predictable pain. It makes me feel very centered and it's grounding. And so I don't have a lot of experience with like kink. So I was wondering for you, when it comes to that kind of pain, does it make you like live inside your skin in a more calming way or a centering way? I'm not sure how to phrase it, so I said anchoring, but I'm just curious about how you use that in order to how you translate how you understand yourself in that moment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Definitely is anchoring, and it's very, puts me in that moment, right? So whatever else I'm stressed out about, you know, my day at work or this or that, anything that I'm stressed out about, like, goes out of my mind. You know, I'm just there in that moment, being able to enjoy that moment.
Yeah.
The other interesting piece. Oh,
it's about you, Antoinette. Go
I was
ahead.
going to say the other interesting piece about the controlled pain that can occur in kink play is that what I found in my experience is that it kind of resets things for the chronic pain of my various medical conditions. You know, part of it is that there's only one pathway for the pain to go through in your body. So if the pain from the flogging is going through, the pain from your rheumatoid arthritis isn't making it through. It's a different sensation. It's a change from your baseline. And so as someone who lives in pain every day and it's a constant noise in the background, a buzz of pain, pain, pain that I can't change or control, to have this new pain makes the buzz of the old pain kind of subside for a moment. The other piece is that engaging in a variety of kink play, whether it's painful or not, can result in kind of this endorphin release that also helps mitigate your pain response to other things, akin to people getting a runner's high. You just had this flood of endorphins and hormones in your system, and then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, nothing, I'm feeling fantastic, and everything else just kind of fades. So between the two, you know, it definitely can be very therapeutic and in some ways grounding for folks to participate in quote unquote painful activities.
So for myself, I have a psychological disability, and there are plenty of times where my mind can't get out of a specific loop, and that can take me away for days from what I need to center myself, and from any activity, I just can't function. But I know that when I'm playing, there is only one thing that I can focus on if I'm playing with pain, and that is that particular sensation. And it kind of not only reminds me that there's something outside of this loop that I'm stuck in, but also that I can survive this pain. And that gives me a sense of pride in myself. It changes quite a bit for me. There was more I was going to go into, but I can't remember. So Angela, I cut you off. What were you going to say?
You're fine. I was just thinking too about fire play. I've never used it as like a physical therapy, but I do have a lot of back pain, and it does help with that, like fire cupping. And funny story, I went to a doctor for my back on a Monday, and I had forgotten that I had done some fire cupping on Saturday. And he saw my back and was like, "Oh, is that cupping?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah." But he was like, "Okay." Wasn't that big of a deal.
I see that in
Cupping
Chinatown
is,
quite frequently. Go ahead.
it's also something that's moved into more mainstream physical therapy practice, which every time I see a continuing education on it, it just really gives me a giggle because I'm just like, oh, it's cupping. Oh, no fire involved usually when it's involved with physical therapy, but it's still the same use of suction to create a different type of stretch sensation, which can be very helpful for muscle spasms, trigger points, and just general pain relief.
Antoinette, can you talk about what cupping looks like specifically for somebody who might not have seen it before?
So when we're talking about fire cupping, what you'll see is that someone has obviously their source. There's usually a small candle, a container with alcohol and their batons. And then the cups themselves are glass cylinders. They almost look like little teeny tiny fish bowls. And so what the person will end up doing is using the heat and the alcohol from their fuel source to warm up the air inside of the cup and then apply it to the skin. And once you create that seal on the skin, and I realize you can't see that I'm talking with my hands, my apologies. Once you create that seal, the difference in the temperature outside of the cup and inside of the cup creates a pressure differential that then sucks your flesh up into the cup. So it's a way of getting a very specific type of stretch that you can't really mimic. Maybe with like a vacuum pump would probably be the closest way to mimic it. But what's added to it with the fire play is that you also have this temperature differential. So you have this suction sensation and a temperature differential, which is just an amazing combination of sensations. Again, that can range from very therapeutic if that cup is placed over top of, say, a trigger point that's causing you particular pain, and can be sensual if it's over an erogenous zone, because then it also increases sensation to that area once the cup comes off, which is all of the fun. And it can also be painful if you're creating too much sensation, too much of a temperature differential, or actually moving the cup and creating additional friction in pieces. You can have a lot of fun with cupping.
So you mentioned that it can be placed over an erogenous zone. It doesn't need to be. Is kink necessarily sexual?
Absolutely not. It can be. It's arguably for some people a lot more fun when it is, but it's not inherently in itself about the sex. You can have fun with all these different fire plays and pieces without having to bring a sexual piece to it. It's something that needs to be negotiated between the two people that are playing. I know for myself, I enjoy rope for the sake of rope. You can throw rope at me and I'm a happy, happy camper. And there does not have to be anything sexual or sensual involved at all, whether I'm bottoming or topping, for me to be happy with the sensation of being bound or helping someone else have that type of sensation. But it can also be an adjunct to adding in some fun with sexual play. And a lot of kinks are in that way. So you can negotiate to not have cups on any erogenous zones, or you can throw them on all the erogenous zones and just have a sensation overload.
So I'm going to, you've said negotiation a few times. I'm going to actually go back and put Mordana on the spot if she's willing to talk. And you can just go ahead and say no if you want to.
Okay.
But since you are so frequently in charge of things like safety and health, what does negotiation look like in your experience?
Okay, so negotiation is what? Okay, let me actually take a step back here and go to a prior question of what kink is to me. And one of the most important aspects of kink to me is the amount of communication a lot of us have, because of how much we're doing with our bodies and these uncomfortable areas that we're sometimes going into, because at some point we all have to explore for the first time. If you're exploring with yourself for the first time, or you're exploring with another person for the first time, we have to tell these other people what we want or what we don't want. So negotiation becomes a very important thing to us, even those that are established relationships. And negotiation can look and be very complex. It can be very structured, or it can be very quick for people who have established relationships, but even those people have a type of negotiation that does happen. So there can be a wide spectrum of what negotiation will look like. The most important thing is telling people what you're looking for, what your desire is, what you're trying to get out of it, and most importantly, what your boundaries are, what you don't want to happen, what you don't want to hear, what you don't want to be hit by, what you don't want to be touched by, or any or areas. And can go into so many different areas, and it's going to change from person to person. And that's one of my hard things is I got brain damage, and I have trouble remembering people's because I had so many different play partners, and remembering what each person's limits and boundaries are, it can be so difficult. I actually have to like keep notes and write them down.
That's great. Does rope, Antoinette, also involve negotiation?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so much that can go right and can go wrong. So it's vitally important that a conversation happens about what the person is looking to get out of a scene. With rope, are there any injuries? Are there any places that they don't want to be touched? What is the type of sensation they're looking for out of the encounter that we're having? Especially coming as a top, you know, my goal is to have someone have a fulfilling and enjoyable time when they play with me, you know, and whether that's sexual or not. And so, you know, sitting down and having a negotiation about where's everyone at and what is everyone looking for is super, super important. It's something that I do every time that I play, and it's something that I do even with established long-term play partners. Now, what it looks like with someone that I play with very often really may be hey, is everything the same? Nothing's new. We're good to do the usual. Okay, great, let's go. And that might be the end of it. But we're still checking in to see, are we still on the same page before we start playing? And because it's very easy for it to change from person to person, but also within the same person from day to day. If I'm having a super bad pain day because of my other medical conditions, I may not be in the mood to do some crazy rough and tumble and beat up my submissive, even though that's his favorite thing in the whole wide world, because I'm physically not able to handle that at that time. And then there'll be days where, you know, maybe normally my submissive really likes getting his ass handed to him, but today he's like, nah, I kind of want like something sweet and cuddly. And I'm like, okay. So still having that conversation to make sure that we are still all looking for the same things and not assuming, because you know what happens when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. We want to make sure that everybody is on the same page with what they're doing. With all types of bondage, especially because you're at the point where if you're bottoming for bondage, you're at a point where you need to trust the person that is tying you up, because your hands are tied, literally. If something were to go wrong, you cannot get out. You can't help yourself. So you really need to make sure that you have these conversations about what are you looking for and what are we trying to do and what's off limits before you put yourself in a position where you are literally in the hands of another human being.
And Angela, I want to get back to you too. It sounds like you have a longer term person that you're committed to. What does your negotiation look like, and does it change from day to day?
It can, definitely based on, you know, if we can play or not. Some days I can, some days I can't. And, but what's neat is we also have different protocols and rituals that we do every day that have nothing to do with sex or play, that keep us connected and really makes for a deep intimacy. So a lot of submissives will kneel for their sir. I can't kneel, but one of our rituals is when he comes home at the end of the day, I sit next to him and I take off his shoes. That's a ritual. That's something we do every day. He puts me to bed at night. And, you know, those are things that we just do every day. You know, no matter if we had a rough day, no matter if we had an argument an hour ago, like we do those things every day. And if I may, I just wanted to go back to negotiating and setting limits. So everyone has limits. You may just not know what your limits are yet, but if I were a top, I wouldn't want to play with a bottle who says that they have no limits. Because to me, that would just mean that they don't know their limits yet. So you really want to think about what your soft and hard limits are. Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
What do you mean by soft and hard limit?
So hard limits are things that are definitely off the table. So for me, that would involve anything that has to do with like blood or bodily fluids or things of that nature. Soft limits are things that you don't want to do in this scene, but maybe in the future you might be willing to negotiate on them. For me, once upon a time, hair pulling used to be a soft limit for me. Now that's something that I love. In the past, I didn't. So there are things that might change in the future, but for this particular scene, you don't want to do that.
Great, thank you. How
That's how I
did you
describe it.
develop your initial relationship? How did you go over what you wanted and what you didn't want and develop a relationship out of that?
So the relationship started first. My last relationship, I was in a poly dynamic, but we were not in a power exchange dynamic. In this relationship, we started things very slowly. So because this was the first time I was in this type of relationship, we went slow and really took time to know each other and trust each other. You know, he had to get to know me before he could be a dominant over me. You know, I get concerned sometimes when I see people that are, oh, you know, I'm looking for a dominant, and you know, they rush into these relationships. We've been doing this for 5 years and we're still learning. And so yeah, just by going slowly and trying a lot of trial and error as far as my disability. I do a lot of service oriented tasks, and that doesn't always mean domestic service, because I have days where I don't have the energy to do a lot of domestic tasks, but I can do things like making phone calls and setting our calendar, you know, our social calendar and things like that. So it's just thinking differently about it.
Sure. I'm going to take you back a step again and ask you what domestic service is to you.
Domestic service, like taking care of the house. And I do some of those things. I think I do the things that I'm able to do. I make a joke that my SIRD probably does a lot more domestic tasks than other dominants do. But, you know, taking care of the dishes, you know, some of those mundane things that honestly, I don't even really enjoy doing, but they have to get done. Looking at it from a DS perspective kind of makes it a little more fun. You know, that I'm doing this service for him and for us as a household.
Are all dominants, do they all like that sort of behavior, or is there variation that you found?
Variation, yeah. My dominant really likes it. Like he loves his clothes folded in a certain way, which I had to learn. Yeah, so you know, it depends on the dominant, what they want and what the S type wants to give.
Mm-hmm. S type being a sub.
The other,
Yes.
Okay. So one of the things that I just wanted to jump in there and add, you were saying something about, I wouldn't want to play with a submissive who said, I don't know what my limit, or I have no limits. I learned that thankfully from somebody who told me before I got myself into trouble. I was hanging out with some folks in a hot tub, and about all of them were kinky. And I said, oh, you can do anything you want to me, which was a big mistake. So a friend of mine said, never, ever say that to somebody who's kinky. I can see Mardana smiling a little bit here. And I asked, well, why not? And they explained to me, and I'm going to put a caution warning on this because this is one of the more extreme practices that we talk about. They explained to me what sounding is. And sounding is when you put pipes of increasingly wider sizes into the urethra of a person. And I heard about this, putting pipes into somebody's penis. And I couldn't, just the idea that somebody would be able to do that. And it's not just, you know, penises that you can do this to. You can also do this with vaginas, is put pipes in. And when I say pipes, I mean something the size of a needle into the urethra. And it terrified me. And I thought, is that something I want to do? No, no, it really isn't. And now that I think I'm more experienced with kink, I can say, I might want to try that with the right person at some point, but it's definitely a limit that I have. And I tell people that in advance. And that's something that everybody needs to explore. When you say, I have no limits, well, what about, I don't know, pretending you're 2 years old? What about engaging in something called race play, which is when you have one person pretending to be a certain race and another person pretending to be another race, and then treating you in some sort of situation. Usually it's, you know, I'm on an auction block and you're buying me, and then I have to do whatever you say. I have those limits. Those are things I don't want to do. And maybe I can get Mordana to speak more on why she was smiling and what other hard limits she's encountered.
Well, it just being in that situation, I've seen a lot of people who are new to this get into these situations where I want to try anything, I want to try everything, and they don't realize what's available out here to happen to them. And sometimes they get really surprised and shocked right away. And sometimes I find them, they run in and they are enjoying themselves very quickly. We have a wide variety of reactions to some. But what was the second part you asked me?
Oh, I asked you why you were smiling and what some of the limits that you've run into have been. Mm-hmm.
Limits. So like I've played with goodness how many people I can't even count, and I do a lot of service topping, and a lot of people seek me out for all sorts of different plays and types of play that I do, and it's hard to put that because I've heard limits of everything. I have people who don't want to be hit, people who don't want to have certain things said to them.
I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay. Why don't I give Antoinette a chance to speak? She's looking very intently.
Well, what I was gonna say, that's one of the things with the limits is that they really do run the gamut. And it's something that's very important to have those conversations because, you know, if you don't, that's when people can really get in trouble. So I don't know if Mordana actually remembers this or not, but way back when I was a little baby kinkster and I didn't know what my limits were, they actually like saved my ass at the end of a party from like just like being in a really precarious situation. Because I didn't know what my limits were. I didn't know what I needed for aftercare. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And I was like, yeah, sure, let's just do all the things. And yeah, that was not a good look. I often say, when folks say that I have no limits, and I say, okay, great. So I can go grab my knife and take a finger off then, right? That's a limit. And you kind of think, you know, who would want to cut off a finger? Well, there are people that enjoy knife play and blood play, who would very happily like to slice you. And one of the things that can happen with that is a deeper cut that could result in something coming off. So if that's not something that you want to possibly participate in, you need to say as much. And it's okay to say, I don't know yet. I am new. I haven't explored. I'm still figuring it out. And that's a way preferable way to approach it than to just say, oh, nope, I don't have any limits. You can easily say, I'm exploring. I'm not sure what my limits are yet, and go from there. Because there is so much wonderful things out there in the kink world that you can do. I also wanted to cycle back just a little bit and just say that not everything is dominance and submission. There are a lot of us out here who don't participate in power dynamics with our kink and BDSM at all. Aside from my relationship with my one polyamorous partner, where he is my submissive, most of my kink play and most of my kink partners, we are in power neutral situations, where it is more a situation of someone is topping or doing the thing and someone is bottoming or getting the thing done to them. And it's a very power neutral situation. We're coming to it as equals, deciding what thing are we going to participate and who's doing what. So that's another piece that I feel like needs to really be, people need to be aware of, because there's folks that come into the scene that think that all it is this power exchange and I have to come in and be a domly dom and tell people what to do. And it's like, no, we can come at this at equals and I can still get my ass beat, but you don't have to be a jerk about it.
Angela, it looks like you want to say something.
I wanted to add to that too. Even in, like, I'm in a power exchange dynamic and I'm submissive to my sir, but I'm not submissive to anybody else, right? So if I go to an event, I expect to be treated with respect, and I don't expect someone to give me that kind of domly attitude. You must do something for me.
Exactly. You're your sir submissive, not everybody's submissive.
Exactly.
So we have a comment here in the chat, and it says, I think that urination is a hard limit for me. And I wanted to address that really quickly and open it up for the rest of the panel to address. Yeah, that's a hard limit for a lot of people, I think. But then there are a lot of other people who really do enjoy it. And I didn't understand why at first until I went and I asked somebody, what does this give you? And what they were talking about is the fact that their power play was so intense, and they were submissive. Their power play was so intense that when somebody urinated on them, it felt like they were being given a gift by somebody who was really, really powerful, and they were worthy to accept that, which was a different way for me to look at it. Has anybody else heard anything about that? Sounds like a big no.
So, well, I can chime in a little bit on that. And it's one of my personal hard limits is when I've witnessed it being done. I can enjoy watching other people actually do it. But that one of the things that I was actually really surprised by the way you explained their reason of what they get out of it, because there's like a lot of reasons comes down to the degradation, the humiliation, or the power aspect that come into a lot of these acts, because they give us this thrill, this inner deep primal emotional response. And that was a very interesting take on that. And it shocked me a little bit, but it was like really nice way to put that. And so what you get out of this is not necessarily what someone else gets out of that exchange. And you have to remember that it's just looking at what other people do how do I put that into words? We all have different perceptions.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I again am talking, and I should be letting other people talk, and I certainly will in a moment. But I had a partner once, which is somebody I had a long-term relationship with, who liked being in a straitjacket. And that was something that I didn't understand at first. I didn't want to participate in. Until I asked him why, and he explained that it made him feel like he was being held and taken care of. And it sounds a little bit, Antoinette, like what you were talking about with rope, that feeling of being snug and cared for. So I learned a little bit just asking. Has anybody else come across any types of play that they found out they didn't initially enjoy, but they found out later makes sense in a way? I don't know if I
Well,
asked
I
that
feel
question.
like that's part. I feel like that's part of the reason why, you know, we keep pushing the negotiation piece, and discussing what you're trying to get out of a scene. Because, for example, like I have people that I play with where for them, being in rope is like the straitjacket. It's the big, encompassing, all over hug that you're just getting all of the great feedback and squeeze, and you just feel safe and warm and great. And then for other people, being in that big encompassing hug feels like a challenge. Like I need to break out of this hug, and like I'm in it because I want the challenge of trying to get out of it. And they both can look the same from the outside looking in. And so then part of that is looking at what is that person trying to get out of this scene, so that we can then try to get to what's at the core of it. And the same thing with urination. You know, I've seen some people where for them, it's the humiliation, the degradation of someone using them as a personal toilet. For others, it's, you know, I'm going to circle this back to my own submissive. For him, he just really enjoys the taste of everything. He's very orally fixated. And so it is a different taste sensation that you can't get anywhere else. There's nothing else like it. So it's a very different thing that just takes him to a different place. As well as he also likes the idea that it's just like, yep, you're going to be my personal toilet now. Clean up after everything. It's great. But so it can really take a lot of different forms, all of them, depending on what the intent and the feeling that you're trying to get out of the scene really is.
Thank you. Before we go too much further, I wanted to make sure that we had a conversation about safety and different safety practices. I can see Angela nodding. Angela, would you mind talking to us a little bit, particularly as a person with a disability, what safety practices look like to you and what you make sure to do, especially when you're starting out with someone new?
Sure. So anytime I play with someone, I have to negotiate with them first and talk about my disabilities. So if someone's going to flog me, I have to tell them I have a scar right above my butt from spina bifida, and which hurts even just from a light touch. It can send a shooting pain down my leg. So I have to be sure that they're not going to hit that area, and they're aware of it. And I also need to take breaks a lot of times. I have bladder and bowel issues, so if I need to go to the bathroom, I need to take a break. I'll call yellow. You know, definitely you want to use your safe words. Safe words in a scene are, well, in most public spaces, they're green, yellow, and red. Yellow is slow down, red is stop, all play stops. So for me, sometimes when I need to take those breaks, but I want to come back, I'll say yellow, I'll go do what I need to do, and I'll come back. And I'll talk about that during negotiation, because that could happen. You know, all these things we want to talk about first, and so that they're aware of it. And it's interesting with me, you know, when we were talking about urination, for me, I have bladder issues. So if I have sex with someone, it's a possibility that I could pee, and they have to be aware of that. And not, you know, I have to be with someone that's not going to be bothered by that, but I don't necessarily want to be with someone who is attracted to that. Yeah. And, you know, today for me personally, because there have been so many consent violations, not only in Philadelphia, but in the scene overall, today mostly I play with either my sir or a service top if we go to a dungeon or a play space. You know, I recommended people look for the service tops, because most play spaces will have service tops, people that are specializing in a particular area of play.
So I have a question. I see a question right here, and maybe actually Mordana, who is a service top, can answer it. What is a service top? Can you give us a little more?
Okay. Well, service top to me is someone who provides topping services on a general public basis. So at a dungeon that I'm regularly at in Philadelphia that I work for, I generally invite people to come up and experience types of play from me. And I don't necessarily get anything out of it in a dominant sense. I don't really look to get that at all. Once in a while, you might get a weird connection with someone, but I just look to give a person an experience, help them even learn for the first time. It so it's just providing a service as a top to these people.
And talking
It
about
could be
doing things
super
for the
helpful. Hello? Okay,
Right,
I was
go ahead.
saying that it can be super helpful for as a learning experience for people getting into kink to be in a non-pressure situation with someone that's not trying to get into your pants, that's not trying to leverage this into something else, who is skilled at what they're doing, so that you get a better frame of reference for correctness. So learning what is a good flogging scene, what does a safe flogging scene look like when you're a bottom is a very important thing to note, because there's a chance that you could get injured on the bottom end of things. So being able to try before you buy, so that you then, when people are asking, well, what are your limits? You know, well, I tried that flogging that one time. Man, I'm not really a fan, but the spanking was great, and really just gives you a chance to learn and experience. And service bottoming, although not something you hear a whole lot about, is also super important for people who are learning how to top and learning these different things, so that they can get the appropriate feedback for how to become better tops and learning a skill as well.
Let's talk about demos for a second, and I'm going to pick on Kitten. Kitten, can you tell me a little bit about some of the demos that happen in your shop?
Probably the most common one we get asked for is for the neon wand, which I have up here. I can plug it in. What do you like about the neon wand? While I get this set up, Maisha.
Sure. Me personally, I love the sensation of the electricity. And there are a couple of ways specifically I like it. One is not using the neon wand, actually. And it surprised the daylights out of me because I wasn't expecting it. Somebody was at a public play party who is a service top for electric. And he was playing with his toys and just sat there saying, does anybody want to try a cattle prod? And I thought, holy good God, a cattle prod, what? And no, never. And I walked away. And of course, the whole time I'm thinking, could I handle a cattle prod? Can people survive cattle prods? What's this cattle prod thing? And then of course, my sense of curiosity got the best of me. And I went and said, okay, hit me in the shoulder with a cattle prod. And it was this fantastic, overwhelming experience that it was like being tickled, but with nails all throughout my body. And I could feel nothing else for that moment. And it was fantastic. On a completely different level, I've had somebody play with a neon wand. And Kitten, maybe you can explain a little bit more about how this works, but there's a panel that they were using and it turned them into a conductor. And then they were able to just lightly run their fingers over my back. And everywhere their fingers went, I could feel this, very slight electric trail. It was beautiful. I loved that.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a neon wand itself. If anybody has seen it, it comes with a couple of different glass attachments. There's a variety of attachments you can get for it. This is the one I usually show first. Just like this, it's kind of hard to see. This like flat but round attachment. Let me see if you can see it when it's on. It's pretty. Oh, you can see it. I don't know if you can hear it, but when it's not making direct contact with the skin, you can feel it and you can kind of see the electric shock coming through. So for external stimulation, it can be pretty intense, just running it over different sensitive areas of your body. And so one of the other attachments here feels more like a tattoo. Hang on. I think our tester is a little bit old, so. What is it? Okay, so this one, it's a little bit of a smaller point, a little more pinpoint sensation, can feel more like a tattoo, like I said. The Power Tripper, which is the contact pad that Maisha mentioned, is actually downstairs right now, but that's a contact pad that you would plug into here, and it's about a rectangular shape, about this big, and you would put it usually like in your belt, like in your pants, in the waist of your pants, against your skin, so it's flush against your skin and it's not going to move around. And once you turn it on, then your entire body is conductive. So I could shock somebody through my fingers, I could kiss somebody, you could do oral sex, you could, anything you can think of with your body, you're going to shock them through your skin. And then you can get really creative with that. Anything that's metal is conductive. So once you hold that while you're turned on with a power tripper and you touch somebody's skin with it, you can electrify them that way as well. So we've had a conductive rope that has little metal strands throughout the rope. So imagine tying somebody up and having like a full body harness on them and then touching the rope and just electrifying it. You can use Christmas tinsel and like touch it to somebody and they're going to get shocked through all the little tiny tinsels. But yeah, you can just get really creative and playful with electricity.
So I'm going to actually ask, I'm sorry, I'm taking us in a different direction for a second because we've only got 20 minutes left and I want to leave time for questions. But I want to ask Angela first, how has kink affected your sense of self?
It's allowed me to really just open up and be myself, to be comfortable in my own skin. And it's helped me with mental health issues. It's helped me with anxiety. You know, I'm in this power exchange dynamic now, and it's interesting. One of the things, at first, I thought, you know, is this something I want to take outside the bedroom? You know, and I had to get new carpet in my house real quickly. And I had a really hard time making this decision. Do I want carpet? Do I want laminate flooring? And my dominant helped me. You know, I went to him and I was like, you know, I couldn't sleep because I couldn't make this decision. And he's just like, get the laminate. And all of a sudden, like, my worries and my anxiety was gone. And, you know, it's helped me so much in that area. And it's actually helped me. People think of being a submissive as being a doormat. You know, like we're this quiet person that can't, you know, speak up for themselves type of thing. And it's actually helped me to speak up for myself more. And I'm more assertive now than I ever was. So, thanks.
How do you think that happened? The sense that it was okay to be assertive?
I think, well, there was probably a few things for me that happened because I also got involved with therapy and 12-step programs and things like that have helped me. And so I think it was that, but also that in my dynamic, I think that today there's only one person I have to please. I used to be really like a people pleaser. You know, I wouldn't be able to say no to people and I'd have to please everybody. Today, there's only one person I have to please and I can say no to other people and that's okay.
That's beautiful. Antoinette, how about you? Has kink helped you in any way access your life more or helped change your psychology of life?
kink was huge for my own body acceptance. I think all of us look at ourselves in the mirror and go, oh, I wish I didn't have this. I wish this was different. We're bombarded with images that don't look like any of us. So being in a kink space really helped me learn to become more comfortable in my skin and to realize like I don't have to be perfect and that I don't have to be a size 2 and that my tiger stripes from my kids are fine and I can still go and be sexy and do all the fun things. And just really like seeing, and even just seeing other people who are just within their moment and enjoying themselves. And it didn't matter that boobs were sagging and cellulite was showing and scars from surgeries were in the way. It just didn't matter. The other piece of it is that as a top, you know, to be able to learn this skill and embrace it and become good at it, and to just be like, I can do a thing, this sense of accomplishment, and this building of strength, because in the learning of how to become a rope top and to learn how to suspend someone and learn how to suspend myself really helped me push my own limits and body strength. And it's this wonderful sense of accomplishment where I'm just like, I was in the air. I did that. I turned myself upside down and I flipped around and it was all me. I am amazing. And to be able to do something that is just like wonderful and brings you that sense of like joy and accomplishment, to just be like, I did the thing, was just so good for my self-esteem. Also, you know, participating in various types of kink play is really cathartic on an emotional level, to give myself permission to cry. And yes, sometimes I need someone to give me a really good flogging to get that permission to cry, but to finally sometimes get to that point to just let all my emotions out and do a real ugly, snot flying, tears, fog up my glasses, cry, and just let all the emotions out, is also super, super helpful. So.
I am going to be cruel again and throw another question back at Mordana. Because we are talking about things like strong emotions. How do you take care of the people that you're playing with, particularly when you're topping and just afterwards?
Well, let's go a little full circle here. Negotiation, and it's one of the things I actually try and ask people who bottom for me, is what the requirements are for aftercare, because I actually want to make sure that's set up in preparation before the scene starts, just because usually when a scene ends, sometimes they end abruptly and you want to be prepared for when it ends abruptly. Now, this can come in also a wide variety of needs from your bottom. I have some that don't require anything other than a thank you and you're welcome and a phone call maybe the next day to make sure they're okay. Some of them need very close cuddling, sometimes a security blanket or a particular stuffed animal to be there with them. Generally, one of the biggest things is just checking in on them as the scene ends, and just, hey, are you okay? Is there anything I can do for you? Let me get you some water because you're probably dehydrated. And yeah.
I think that's great. And something for me, I used to play with a partner who would check in on me just to see how I was doing. And that sounds really mundane and kind of like an interruption maybe of what we were doing, but it actually wasn't. For us, he would be giving me a flogging and then do this wonderful thing where he would run his fingertips over the spaces that he had flogged. And one of the things about flogging, for me anyway, that I found is it sensitizes my skin. And so when I felt his hand on my skin in those areas, it was a heightened sensation, a heightened sense of intimacy because I had been so sensitized. And he would lean over and whisper in my ear, you know, do you like this? Do you want more? And it was just so beautiful and sexy. So I think check-ins for me, do as many as you want. I love that. give me more. And then I love the idea of cuddling afterwards, because you have this really intense emotional engagement with somebody, and then you can step back and, you know, just enjoy that intimacy without necessarily enjoying anything else that went with it before. Antoinette, do you want to talk a little bit about, you know, what you do to keep in touch with people you're playing with?
So I want to say that tops need aftercare too. In my switchity switch world of doing both. A lot of the activities that we participate in are physically taxing. You know, stringing somebody up in the air by rope, it's a lot of work. It's a good workout. And so, you know, physically, people also need aftercare as well as emotionally. So I typically like to make sure that I have contact information for folks so that we are talking during the scene, immediately after the scene, and then checking in within like a day or two, just to make sure that everything is still where we wanted it to be. It's also an opportunity for me to get feedback, because sometimes people feel in the middle of a scene that if something wasn't quite what they wanted, even if it wasn't to the point where they feel like their consent was violated or anything, but you know, they were looking for vanilla and they kind of got sweet cream and it was not quite it. To have that feedback, to know like, okay, well, where did we miss the mark? Where was there a miscommunication? How can we do better? And it is a how can we do better? Because, you know, if I didn't get what you were looking for, or you didn't communicate it well to me, or we just kind of just didn't line up appropriately, figuring those things out so that the next time we can make the play even better. Some people really have a scenario of drop after a scene, you know, so we've done all these things and we've gotten all these endorphins running and we've created this wonderful intimacy, and maybe we had some amazing sex mixed in and we did all this physically challenging things, and then you go home and you because, you know, now all the endorphins have worn off, all the fun, everything is crashed on you. And so checking in like that next day to see like, hey, how are we doing after the crash has happened? Did a crash happen? Do you need more support in some way, shape, or form? And that support may not come from the person that initially did the scene with you. I know for myself, whether I'm service topping, playing with other people, a lot of times my submissive ends up handling my aftercare needs as a top. I don't ask that of anyone that I am topping. My submissive takes joy in providing that service to me. And he knows that I've got my blanket and I've got my water, and he makes sure that my things are packed up just right. And he's got my ice packs so that my hands don't swell up like big gigantic balloons from overdoing it. And he's got my pain medicine and my hot pack on the bed. And he knows like these are the things that I need after a scene with someone, so that, you know, it might not be a situation where the person that I immediately played with is giving me my aftercare, but it might be a situation where I'm going to be fine today, but tomorrow when I drop and my play partner isn't here, now what happens? Which is where, again, I know we keep harping on this negotiation thing, but this is why we have to have these discussions. And sometimes when you're first starting off, you don't know what you need until something happens, and then you realize, wow, okay, I really could have used that. When I first came into the scene, it was with a polyamorous partner of mine. And, you know, all of our kink was in the bedroom. And so he'd tie me up and have a lot of great sex. And then I'd doze off. And then eventually I'd be like, wait, do I have to go home? Oh, yeah, I do have to go home. I've got kids to take care of. Okay, let me get up and go home. And what I didn't realize until later, when I didn't get that, was that taking a nap was part of my aftercare. It's like I needed to physically rest to reset myself. And so when I went to a scene and I didn't get the sleep and I didn't have dinner with my partner before we started playing, so I'm on an empty stomach and I didn't get sleep and I didn't get rest, and now I've got to drive home after a party because I did a rookie stupid mistake of showing up to a party by myself without without a taxi backup. That's when I realized, you know what, these are the things that I need for aftercare that I didn't realize had been kind of organically folded into my relationship with that other human. So this is why we have to have these negotiation pieces, because that's me. I've got chronic pain and fatigue issues, so everything requires a nap for me. That's pretty much my de facto. Whereas I had a very good friend in the scene where literally she just needed a cigarette. Don't touch her, don't hug her, don't talk to her. Hand her a pack of cigarettes and a lighter and point her to the first outdoor space. Once she got her first drag of nicotine, she's like, all right, I'm good, next. And that was all she needed. And to try to get hugs and cuddles after a scene, she wasn't the one. So figuring that out and having those discussions and having that backup is super, super important. It needs to be something that you do negotiate with people. I have service types that I regularly play with where they're like, you know what, they're not really on that cuddle trip. So they're like, hey, what I can do though is I can wrap you up in a blanket and deliver you to someone else for cuddles. And that's something that we talk about and negotiate. And then someone else does the aftercare and gives me the cuddles and make sure I get my nap.
So we only have about 5 minutes left. So I'd really like to encourage all of our audience, our attendees, to go ahead and put all the questions you can think of into the chat right now. And if I don't see any in a few seconds, I have one more question that I'd really like to answer or to ask our panelists. I do know that there was a question here. How can I get in contact with the panelists? If anybody wants to talk about a way they feel safe talking with the audience, feel free. And that's for our panelists.
Maisha, can you also mention that the handout that you gave me, the resources?
Oh, yes. Yes, there is a list of some resources, mostly books, and it's on Disability Pride Philadelphia's website. That's www.disabilitypridephiladelphia.com. They have a section. .org. Thank you. .org. And they have a sex blog there. So I have included just a list of some of the books. It's a tip of the iceberg. And I'm seeing here LGBT plus kink play. Oh, yes. Yes, there is a large portion of the queer community involved in kink. So I know there are various areas that you can look for that more in, different play parties that are open to it more. I know that the aviary, which has been mentioned in the chat earlier, is definitely one of the places that's LGBTQ positive. And that's actually held in the William Way Center here in Philadelphia. And that is actually a center for people who are in the LGBTQ community. See, I'm not seeing any other questions right now. So as we wrap up, I'd like to ask our panelists, oh wait, here's a question. How would you recommend?
No, there's no question.
Oh, right. Okay. Thank you. Oh, okay. How would you advise people who are starting kink for the first time? What would you warn them about and what would you tell them to do? Angela, could you give us an idea?
Yeah, so I would recommend going to munches. Munches are just social events that are usually at bars or restaurants where you get to meet people face to face. You get to talk to other people that are in the scene. It's not a play party, and you just get to meet people and you get to know people. You can ask questions without having any kind of pressure. Also, if you are going to go to a play party, if you are thinking about playing, talk. If you're a submissive or a bottom, talk with other submissives or other bottoms. You want to vet other people that you play with, which means that you want to find out about the people that you play with to make sure that you're safe.
Mardana, how about you? Any advice?
Mute here. So one of the things I want to tell people is figure out what you want to get out of this. And a lot of that comes from self-reflection. I went in headstrong, didn't know what I wanted. I had a very bad experience crashing in the middle of a restaurant because I went too overboard because I wasn't understanding my own wants and needs. And just figuring out what's motivating you to even be here in the first place, figuring out what you want out of this, what you're looking to experience. And then you don't have to limit it to that, but just figuring out the desire first. It helps you open up and understand directions that you can ask about and where you want to go and what you want to learn. And coming out and just observing. I said in chat earlier, someone asked, can I just come to events and observe? Absolutely. Watch what other people do, see what entices you, see what interests you, what you want to learn, and ask questions of the people that are doing these things when they're not doing a scene. A lot of people out here are very eager to help other people learn, or at least explain what things are. Just when you have a moment and they're just not doing anything, ask. Never hurts to ask.
Antoinette?
Don't let the fear of missing out push you into doing something that could be potentially dangerous or unfortunate. Take your time. It's not going anywhere. People have been kinking for decades. We're not going to stop kinking tomorrow. So take your time. Like everyone said, find out about people, vet your people that you want to play with. Watch how they're playing, how they're treating other people. Ask the questions, but also ask yourself the questions of how you're feeling. It's vitally important that you do a personal check-in, emotionally and physically, to sit and look at yourself and go, you know what? Am I stressed? Am I anxious? Am I nursing an injury? Am I, whatever it may be? Did I eat today? Did I drink today? Did I remember to take my medicine? Because those are the things that can significantly impact your enjoyment in a scene. And it's always better to just go, let me take a break here and make sure I'm okay before I start engaging with somebody else.
Kitten, do you have anything that you want to add? You can say no if you don't.
It's okay. I would say check out classes. We do classes here at the shop that I work at. I'll put the link in the chat. So if there's anything that interests you that you're like, oh, I'm curious about rope, we have a rope 101 class coming up. We have a blowjobs class coming up. We typically will have a Kink 101 class at least once a month. So if you're interested in just learning more about kink, we'll have that happening. But we also have books and resources. So I'll put a link for our website in there as well. But tons of books and resources, read all about it. Like you can find anything on power dynamics or kink in general or different types of kinks. We have tons of resources, and you can also just chat up anybody who works at the shop. We're pretty open to it. So.
Thanks. And I just wanted to add something to close off. It's very important with kink to know your body. You'll learn a lot about your body, but you need to start off knowing what's good for you and what's not good for you so you can tell other people how you play. And I would also recommend just keeping at the center of your heart that you're human. And no matter whether you're being looked to as a person in power or you're being looked at as a person who's submissive or you're not involved in a power play at all, make sure that people respect you as human no matter how they treat you during play. Is there anything else anybody wants to add before we close tonight? Okay, it looks like we've addressed the questions in chat and we've talked about, oh, okay, that was a thank you. Talked about everything that we wanted to cover. So panelists, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. And audience,
thank you for having us.
Yeah.
All right, good night, everybody.
I just want to say thank you to everybody. This was an amazing conversation. I got so many thumbs up and heart emojis for everybody on the panel from our YouTube conversation that was going on. And thank you for so much information. I definitely learned a lot. I hope everybody did too. And thank you to our interpreters, Brandy and Rachel, and our captionist, Missy. And I hope everybody stays tuned for Finding Pleasure with Toys with Kitten. We'll see you at 9:30. See you all. Love you.